Philadelphia just called and said they got 2 plane tickets for a 2:30 flight. This is obviously a sign from God that we need to go out there.
To choose between me and my child, I would have definitely said, give Elijah the chance to live.
If the operation hadn't been done before birth, he would have died, no question.
Jason and I always wanted to have 2 children, and with our first daughter, we got pregnant right away, and it was perfect. Everything we dreamed of. We had a midwife, no medicine, and then we conceived Elijah. And then at my 20-week ultrasound, they saw that he had the tumor. Thinking that everything was perfect, and then finding out you have something that's so rare, 1 in 30,000, and that the chance of survival was 50%, it just crushed us. Especially after having such a perfect pregnancy with our daughter, it just didn't make sense.
Elijah has a tumor on his lung. So once we learned about it, it was research gear. What are we dealing with? We learned of the fetal surgery, which at that point is like, wow, we don't want to go there. You know, that's like, you know, very few have ever been done.
Tumor just kept growing and growing and growing, 3.5 times the size of his head, where it was just crushing him. He was just going into failure, heart failure, lung failure, and if we didn't do it, there was no chance.
You could terminate, you could let it go, and he'd eventually possibly die, or you do the surgery. Well, we didn't go out there to terminate, and we weren't going to just let our son die.
We were worried because we knew that most likely the best option in this case was to have fetal surgery.
Fetal surgery started 30 years ago. Idea arose out of the frustration of taking care of babies after birth and then realizing that you were too late, that the damage had already been done, that you had to get to the baby earlier. And obviously getting to the baby earlier was when the baby was still inside the mom. He had a lung tumor in the left lower lobe of the lung, filled virtually the entire chest. And because there's no room for the lungs to grow, and because the heart and great vessels get squished, such babies at that severe end of the spectrum develop what's called fetal hydrops, or heart failure.
April was committed to continuing and pushing forward. You know, we were worried how he was gonna do for the surgery, because sometimes the surgery is just too much for these very small babies in utero, and they sometimes don't survive the surgery.
So I tried not to think of the fact that I could lose my wife and my son. You know, I didn't want to dwell on that per se, but I knew that that obviously was something that could happen.
The day before fetal surgery and the day of fetal surgery, I was so at peace, because I knew that God, He had a plan, and if He was going to save Elijah, and if He was going to help the doctors do what they needed to do, that it would be okay. And so at that point, that was my moment of realizing that it's not in my hands anymore, that I could let go. So that was probably the hardest.
The baby is a miracle, but we had to solve each of those problems in sequence.
Literally, you know, he stuck up his fist. He's like, the tumor was this big. I took it out of your son. We had to make a bigger incision from the middle of his back all the way to the middle of his chest, you know, and open him up. And then he had to massage his heart between his fingers, and then his heart started beating again. You know, and then they stitched him up and stitched her up, and I'm just like...
Coming out of surgery with Elijah, the first words out of my mouth is he in my womb? Because he may have not have been. And that's all I cared about.
Yeah, it's a lot to swallow, you know, but at that point, extremely thankful that they're both here. They were both alive, and that I would see my wife soon.
I didn't hold him for 15 days when he was in the NICU. He was on life support. He had so many tubes, and the equipment was on him, and you couldn't rock that.
But he was helpless, for the most part, a motionless little kid. A couple times I read the story of David and Goliath to him, and I was like, this is your Goliath, and you have to overcome Goliath.
I did take care of Elijah Leffingwell for the easy part, really, the last week or so, and I was fortunate enough to be the neonatologist that discharged him to home. He needed a lot of oxygen, and his heart was struggling to keep up. His lungs were small. He really surprised us. Considering the fact that he got discharged on day of life 66, I mean, it was barely past his due date. We were really amazed. He just beat the odds.
Children's Hospital of Philadelphia is amazing, and everyone on their staff just gave you so much support. They gave you hope that they would do everything in their power to save your child.
what he's gone through is more than I've ever gone through my entire life, and more than most people probably ever will in their entire lifetime.
Elijah and I, we both have scars. We talk about it. We talk about how we both have our boo-boos and how we've been through a lot.
We took him back out to Philadelphia for his follow-up. They were blown away. They were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I hope that they can use his story when they encounter other families who are going through something similar, and when parents are like, well, what kind of life is our child going to be able to live? Well, we have this child. We got Elijah Michael Leffingwell.
There is hope, and you don't want to have any regrets. And we're blessed to have this beautiful baby.